a moment. Shukran, much love for the super chat. Could you give the explanation of why the hadiths about music translate the word as entertainment? I couldn't find it in your videos. Sure. I mean, I'm pretty sure I have uh, some detailed videos on music. You can watch them. Yeah. So the word that is used in the actual hadith is ma'azif, from ma'zaf. That word in itself doesn't mean music. So maybe people are using it to mean music, which is fine because music comes from entertainment. So the actual definition of ma'zaf in Arabic is ma yulha bihi, that thing by which one is entertained. So then maybe the collective or the kind of urfi, maybe by urf convention, people started to use that to refer more so to music. So, for example, when I say entertainment today, what comes to your mind? So you may say, well, music, dancing, and stuff. And I may say, well, why? Entertainment in itself doesn't mean music or dancing. Entertainment means to entertain someone. I could entertain you by telling you jokes. But yet that won't come to your mind when I say the word entertainment. But if I said it like that, then you'd say, yeah, sure, that too is entertainment. I get it. I could entertain you by telling you a story. I could entertain you by telling you poetry. I could entertain you by meaningful conversation. But yet these words won't come to your mind when you hear the word entertainment. That's because your understanding may be shaped by the convention in which you live, okay, and the culture. So anyway, the word ma'azif is not the Arabic word for musiqa. It's not. So the Arabic word musiqa does exist. Or, for example, uh, so the Prophet ﷺ could have, let's say, this hadith. Those who accept this hadith as sahih, first of all, because there's a difference of opinion on these things. Some people don't believe these hadith to be authentic to start off with. Obviously, amongst them, Ibn Hazm and other people. And then these are great muhaddithin. Now, one may say, well, I disagree with Ibn Hazm and all these people. Sure, that's fine. You can disagree. But see, when you disagree, just be, you see, you have to understand, you have to be confident to accept and to disagree with courtesy. Because the problem is that people, when they disagree with something, they start becoming rude, start becoming offensive, start attacking, you don't need to relax yourself, calmate, this whole thing is just, sure, whatever you believe, go with. If you say, look, I believe this here means this, fine. You're not the first. Many people, in fact, one could argue the majority have gone with that. Now, sure, that's your way of looking at it. Majority of the scholars went with music is haram. You find yourself comfortable, you find yourself in that crowd, I'm sure you're amongst many great names and great company. Other scholars challenged that, and some challenged it more than others. Some felt, well, maybe some music is okay. Some felt no music is haram. And they obviously all argued it. So these people who said music is haram used these hadith to say, well, this hadith is speaking about musical instruments when it's using the word ma'azif. They also said things like the Quran doesn't like people to be distracted. And so they used generic arguments. And they used a lot of other hadith as well, which are not really so strong. And some are fabricated and some are just weak. And they used hadith like the Prophet said, I have been sent to break the musical instruments. I have whoever listens to music will have molten, what is it, lead poured into his ear or things like that. See, once again, very scary kind of stuff was used. And then you have some people will say, well, but doesn't everybody say so? So on this side of the fence, people would argue, well, okay, but what about drums? Didn't the Prophet ﷺ listen to drums? And they say, well, okay, well, drums are okay then. So, well, okay, why are drums okay? Because either God likes music or he doesn't like music. And I say, well, he doesn't mind drums, but he just doesn't like the other things. So, well, what are the other things? So, well, blowing. So there's whistling. Is whistling haram? So some people on this side of the fence will say, well, whistling is haram. I don't think most people will consider whistling haram. If a person just whistled, they may say it's not good or it's whatever, but they won't say it's haram. So you say, well, okay, so God, where does it, where's the ruling on whistling? And you say, well, okay, well, whistling ain't haram, but blowing into a tube that has some holes on it and it makes some sounds like a flute is haram. So, okay, so God doesn't like, but he's okay with drums. Say, yeah, he's okay with drums. And some will say, no, he's not okay with drums. Then some say, well, actually, he's okay with blowing instruments because there's a hadith in Tirmidhi that the Prophet ﷺ is walking with Ibn Umar and somebody's playing a flute and the Prophet tells him, tell me when we can't hear him anymore. So they're walking away. And so the Prophet's actually instructing him to listen and tell him. But if it was haram, then isn't he going to get lead poured into his ears? So how can the Prophet instruct somebody to do something haram? So, well, okay, so this group of people said, well, okay, so blowing instruments can't be haram. So, okay, so what is haram then? So there's a group in the middle that said, well, drums and things like trumpets and stuff ain't haram because they used to use them in war. So, okay, but stringed instruments are haram. So like guitars and so they say, so okay, so God doesn't mind drums, and according to these people, he doesn't mind blowing instruments, but he draws the line at stringed instruments. So well why? And say, well, this group will say, well, you're not allowed to question why. And sure, that's fine. If you're from that group, follow that. But these people will say, well, no, because we're allowed to question all of these. So why are we not allowed to question that one? They will say, well, where does the Prophet say about stringed instruments? There's no hadith about stringed instruments. So if it's all instruments like that group over there, or it's no instruments, but to say, well, it's all instruments except this and except this and except this, well, why are we leaving? Well, what does a string do? It's just vibrations. So this group would ask, well, why does God have a problem with vibrations? Because it's just sound. So they would argue that, well, nature makes sound and God has set up the world with sound, and sound is just ultimately vibrations. And so why would God condemn sounds? To them, it doesn't make any sense. That surely everything God says must always make sense. Now, this group will say, well, no, we don't believe that everything God says has to make sense, and therefore we believe in dogma. And that's okay. If you're part of that group and you follow that, that's fine. That's how you worship Allah. That's your devotion. You just practice. You should not then listen to any music. You should not engage in any music. You should, because it's haram for you. But for these people, they don't believe it's haram. That's their way of looking at the deen. You're not here to see how does the rest of the world do it. It's just your devotion. So if you want to And these people would argue that there's no such Sahih Hadith ever, and nothing in the Quran that says music is haram. And obviously, Shawkani has a very good, elaborate discussion on that himself, in spite being a very, you know, I won't say he's clearly a man of hadith, if we can use that term. He's clearly of the hadithi persuasion, like a strong hadithi persuasion. I don't even mean like the Maliki Hanafi, like I'm talking the Shafi'i kind of persuasion of hadith. So when a scholar like Shawkani does a grand analysis and evaluation of all the asanid in Nailul Awtar, it's in his final volume. I think it's the final one. It's the final one, I think. So it's he concludes as well that actually, concluding all of this, you can't say that musical instruments are haram. Although he himself footnotes it by saying, but I would argue against, like I would personally advocate that people don't get into music, and that's fine. That's his personal choice and personal nasiha, and that's welcome. And if people are doing that, but he himself says, but you know what? Looking at all of this, one cannot say this. He says there is nothing established in the Quran or Sunnah that is clear to say that music is haram. Now that's his. Now this camp over here is a minority camp. Okay, this is a small quantity of people. Now the majority of the people fall more so over here. Now it's up to you. You can follow the majority. You can follow them. You can follow these people. Say music is haram. Wherever you follow, this is all Islam. You know, it's not. This is not just Islam. This is not just Islam. These people are not just Islam. All of this is Islam. This is the beautiful diversity of Islam. There's different ways of looking at things. Some people, they look at things and they say, well, no, this is how I follow Islam. I don't ever question. And that's, you know what, that's an incredible level of submission. One must admire that submission. Don't have to agree with it. Other people like Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, they're very clear that no, Islam has to come al-ahkam mu'allala, that all the ahkam in Islam are mu'allala bil asl, that the rulings always have a reason for being haram. They're not just haram. It's not a ritual. Ritual is only worship. So all other actions have an objective to them. So you have to be able to understand the objective. So that's that kind of group. But people disagree. Sometimes people hold a principle, but they don't practice it. So you might get some people saying, like many Hanafis, now they say that the ahkam must always be mu'allala. This was Imam Abu Hanif. They must always have a clear reason and objective to why this thing is haram. But yet many Hanafis will also say music is haram, and they won't question it. Sure, that's their choice. See, people sometimes are fluid. They have a principle. Maybe they don't practice it here. Maybe they practice it somewhere else. It's up to them, their life. Let people be. Stop obsessing over the other. You practice. See, when you look at it, who do you follow? Where do you fall in line? People say, well, I don't know who to follow. Maybe you watch something. Maybe you make a choice. All of it is Islam. You're not gonna miss the mark. But whatever you choose, see, to some people, music is a wreck. It ruins them. Some people, surprisingly, it ruins some people. Sure. I read a quote the other day. Some person said, look, I used to be into music and my life was a nightmare. And then I got serious about Islam and I stopped this, and now their life is in order. Alhamdulillah, more power to them. You know, some people need a certain discipline, otherwise they'll be ruined. So more power to that person. Keep going. Other people, music, as in Urdu, they say it is the ruh ki ghiza, it nourishes the soul. Many people, they feel that music, it connects the soul to the divine. More power to them. we are not here to control other people. We devote ourselves to what we follow. That is, I think, that one of the most important steps for a person when they take their deen seriously to learn. That لَسْتَ عَلَيْهِمْ بِمُسَيْطِرٍ, as the Quran says, you are not here to control them. Let them be. You say, oh, but they're doing sins. According to you, but you're not doing that sin. Not according to them. You see, they're following different people. You say, oh, but I think those people are wrong. But you know what? Right now, it doesn't matter what you think the other people are. Allah's not made you mukallaf to think about what other people are all thinking. It doesn't matter. They have their ijtihad. You have your ijtihad. Follow it. This is true Islam, submission. You submit when the nafs doesn't even want you. You're like, oh, why? I don't want them to listen to me. I don't want them. I'm trying to save them from the hellfire. Relax. Submit. Surrender. Let go. Allah. This is the biggest battle of the nafs that a person will find in faith. Is learning to let go, to surrender. Well, I'll leave you with that. Let's move on.